Hello, everyone, and good evening. It's nice to see you again. I'm Don Arleth, and welcome to Flash News. We begin tonight with the coronavirus report. According to the latest data from the Ministry of Health, laboratory tests confirmed almost 4,500 new infections, and 92 people have died from COVID-19. This is the lowest result in weeks, but by no means is the pandemic over. That's why everyone needs to continue to remain vigilant.
The data are optimistic because the number of infections, occupied beds and ventilators is decreasing in Poland. Almost 16,000 people have recovered. Indeed, this number has stabilized below 20,000. Even on Saturday, when usually we see a peak from Friday's numbers of people testing, this number of positive results was 12,000. However, this does not mean the end of the pandemic. Distance, disinfection and mask, these rules still apply. A vaccine is also expected to become available in January. The first clinics where the vaccination will take place have already applied. We are prepared. We have both the appropriate number of rooms and resources when it comes to personnel. At the same time, the government is consulting with the medical community on the vaccination program. We want these consultations to be very broad. This is why it will be addressed both to the medical community, experts, but also to local authorities. The vaccine is to be given to medical services and senior citizens at first.
As the fight against the pandemic continues, more field hospitals are being established throughout the country, and doctors continue to appeal to those who have recovered from COVID-19 to donate plasma.
The appeal of doctors was answered, among others, by prison staff. The main motive for my actions was to help those who are going through worse so that there is a chance of recovery. Nearly 1,000 officers were involved in the blood donation campaign. As many as 300 of them have recovered from COVID-19. The more actions of this kind are organized, the more people will hear about the possibility of donating plasma that is needed, that is really still needed. Field hospitals also play a huge role in the fight against the disease. One of them was opened in Siedlce in Mazovia Voivodeship, where the number of infections remains high. There is nothing worse for a doctor who has to choose between one patient over another, who to accept to the hospital, who to connect to a ventilator. So I think that the doctors will not have such a dilemma in Siedlce. The adapted and equipped building, which previously served as an oncology and rehabilitation ward, will be able to accommodate 66 and eventually 100 patients within just 3 weeks. All beds have access to the oxygen system and 10 to ventilators.
Virologists throughout Europe warn against Christmas meetings with extended family and friends in order to avoid contact with those outside of the same household. According to many experts, this could lead to a third wave of coronavirus if not respected.
In France, where the epidemic situation is improving, the national quarantine is to be wrapped up by mid-December. Austria will ease its restrictions. In Vienna, museums, libraries, beauty salons and shopping centers are operating again. The situation is quite the opposite in Germany. In Bavaria, where the number of infections is very high, the restrictions were suspended only for 3 days of Christmas. Bavaria is a Christian region, and it is important for us to celebrate this time together with our families. The United Kingdom, which tomorrow is the first in the world to start vaccination against the coronavirus, has announced that it will use military planes to import the vaccine if necessary.
The hospital is just going through the final checks to be able to implement the vaccination program for our high priority groups.
Queen Elizabeth II is to set an example.
A white winter has come to places in Europe, and although in December, it's not surprising, the intense snowfall was a sign for residents of several European countries that winter is officially here. In some places, snowdrifts were even up to 4 meters high. Here's more.
Record-high snowfalls were reported in Italy. Many mountain towns in the northern part of the country have been cut off from the world. Austria is also facing extreme weather conditions. Heavy snowfall paralyzed road traffic. There have already been 2 avalanches. We evacuated people from 5 buildings. Problems on the roads also in Switzerland. Some of them were impassable even for a few hours. There is so much snow that if you enter a deep snowdrift, it is difficult to get out later. In the Czech Republic, there were many crashes on the roads due to snow. The first snow fell also in Poland. Although the snowfall was less intense than in other European countries, the residents of the Wrocław Zoo welcomed the weather with great enthusiasm, although some of them with great surprise.
The forest fire that has broken out on Fraser Island in Western Australia, a UNESCO World Heritage Site, has partially been contained. Forest fires have wreaked havoc in the area since mid-October and have already covered more than 83,000 hectares of the island, more than half of its total surface area. Fraser Island is the largest sand island in the world, known for its rainforests and lakes.
Firefighters have been trying to contain fires on Fraser Island for over 6 weeks now. The fires were caused in mid-October by an illegal fire. The fight against the elements is hindered by the heat and dry ground. About 100 firefighters and over 25 firefighting planes are involved in the rescue operation. In recent days, the temperature in Western Australia exceeds 40 degrees Celsius in some places. This is the first such heat wave this year, which further increases the risk of fires. A strong storm paralyzed the Croatian coast. Wind speeds of up to 130 kilometers per hour hit central Dalmatia, and the storm surge was sometimes even 6 meters high. In northern Italy, on the other hand, there were torrential downpours. The Panaro River burst its banks, causing local floods in the Modulena area. Residents whose houses were flooded in the villages were evacuated. Flooding was also experienced in Sicily. Confessions via smartphone are not valid, announced the Vatican. Despite the pandemic, a priest cannot confess over the phone because, quote, there is no real presence of the faithful and no word of absolution. Exactly 50 years ago, Chancellor Willy Brandt knelt in front of the Warsaw Ghetto Heroes Memorial. This was the first step towards German-Polish reconciliation and the first visit of the West German head of government to Poland.
There is an agreement in the European Union on sanctions for human rights violations. Foreign ministers have adopted a new EU sanctions policy in cases of human rights violations. Discussions on this issue have been ongoing for a long time now. Work has accelerated after the poisoning of the Russian oppositionist Alexei Navalny.
Under the new sanctions, persons found guilty of human rights violations will be banned from entering the European Union, and their financial assets in Europe will be frozen. The legal framework has been adopted, so only now work will begin on a list with specific names. The EU restrictions are based on the American Magnitsky Act. Sergei Magnitsky, a lawyer murdered in Russia, discovered cases of corruption in the Russian administration. For a long time, there was no consent for such sanctions in the EU. Some diplomats explained that European restrictions will not be limited to Russia alone, that they will be global and that the Union will be able to target both the Middle and Far East, Africa and South America.
3 days around the UK, the British royal couple will embark on the trip by train before Christmas. Kate and William will travel almost 2,000 kilometers to meet with those who played an important role in the fight against the pandemic.
Departure from Euston Station in London. The royal couple departed accompanied by Christmas sounds by Shaking Stevens. And this is a stop in Edinburgh. William and Catherine will meet among others with healthcare workers, nursing home workers and teachers. The royal couple travels, of course, in a deluxe class reserved for the chosen ones. That is the royal train used by Queen Victoria 180 years ago. In the Chinese town of Harbin, winter and artists create wonders every year. The International Ice and Snow Sculpture Festival is scheduled for January, but preparations are already underway. Ice cutting took place on the frozen river of Songhua. The pieces will serve as building blocks for the works that will be created here very soon. Work on the project was accompanied by a festive atmosphere and severe frost. A different building material, a different scale, but the effect is equally delightful. Ibrahim Bailal is also a sculptor, but he does not have a frostbite. Everything he needs for his work is on his desk. A microscope is also useful. The artist creates art in pencil tips. He took the idea from a sculptor from Taiwan using the same technique. Bailal's microsculptures represent the great history of Egypt. This is definitely not what you would call a discreet jewelry. One cannot oversee this ring, and this is the way it is supposed to be. It is called marigold, the ring of wealth, and it is encrusted with over 12,000 diamonds. The ring earned its place in the Guinness Book of Records. Its creator is a 25-year-old jeweler from India who says his piece of art is priceless and does not want to let go of it. Let us finish with Sao Paulo, where you can see more than just the lights of other cars. In the largest city of South America, despite the pandemic, a unique show of Christmas illuminations was organized. Visitors can safely admire more than 200 light sculptures by driving on a kilometer-long track.
And with those pretty sights, we conclude today's program. Come back and join us again tomorrow, same time, same place. See you then. Good night.